biggest thing I want to say that has set me up for success is I learned a lot about what I did not like. So in undergrad, I did 12 internships, which usually confuses people because they cannot figure out how I fit that much in. But for me, that was the way I got through school, was really through internships and through working and through scholarships. I mean, I pieced everything together, $1,000 here, $2,000 here. And I was told by my parents I couldn't go to College of Charleston because that was the school that didn't give me any money, in opposition to all of the schools that did. And, by telling me I couldn't do something was the exact way I was going to do it.
You just heard Dakota Kate Isaacs, a PR and marketing phenom in the beauty industry. Dakota recently won Marcom's Most Influential Person of 2025 award. Marcom is one of the world's most prestigious competitions in the field of marketing and communications professionals. And I'm Lisa Champeau, your host for today's episode of HarmonyTALK, a place for dreamers and doers. HarmonyTALK is sponsored by AM Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business and a champion for people who dream big and follow through. Dakota rose to her current spot in the limelight via DECIEM, the company behind the blockbuster skincare products called The Ordinary, which boast ingredient transparency and no-frills packaging. The story of DECIEM and its visionary founder, Brandon Truaxe, who was called the Great Disruptor, were chronicled in the documentary The Abnormal Beauty Company. Dakota was the executive producer for the film, which won the top feature award at the Tribeca X Film Festival. The interview with Dakota was recorded in the fall of 2025. Since then, she has moved on to a new job in the beauty industry, and the film is now streaming on Apple TV Canada. Her story continues to evolve. Welcome, Dakota.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's begin at the beginning. You were raised in Louisville, Kentucky. You graduated from the College of Charleston in 2015 and were hired by DECIEM in 2017, just 2 years later. So your major was in communications. Tell us about your childhood and how you got to the cosmetics industry. Take your time.
Where to start? It's interesting because when I actually think even further back, my earliest memories were sitting on the floor of my aunt's home in her living room and playing with Chanel compacts. And they didn't really have anything in them, but I just remember being so fascinated by beauty products from very early on. And I started working at 14. So I appreciate now this was probably illegal. I was stocking shelves in a health food store that a family friend owned.
We won't tell your mother.
She got me the jobs. But, I think what that gave me was a very early work ethic. 14, I wanted money and that was the way to do something. And so when it came to high school, I actually went to high school on a scholarship. And I was so fortunate. I graduated with 36 students. So I was taught excellence. I don't think I ever even had a multiple choice test. It was about articulating your point of view on something. And I really had a world-class education, which I feel so grateful for because by the time I got to college, there was nothing that I was that impressed by, I want to say freshman year in what I was learning. And I think so much of that goes to my experience in high school.
I read somewhere that when you were young, little girls played house, but you played boss. And you kind of pursued that path, I guess.
I would sit at my desk. I would use my grandfather's nameplate, and then I would have a cash register. And then I would have one of my dad's old cell phones. My sister would be there as my secretary. And then I would also have a baby carriage with a baby in it. So already early on, I never really separated the life into different compartments. It was always all together.
All right, now we'll fast forward just a little bit. You graduated from college. What did you do before DECIEM?
So the biggest thing I want to say that has set me up for success is I learned a lot about what I did not like. So in undergrad, I did 12 internships, which usually confuses people because they cannot figure out how I fit that much in. But for me, that was the way I got through school, was really through internships and through working and through scholarships. I pieced everything together, $1,000 here, $2,000 here. And I was told by my parents I couldn't go to College of Charleston because that was the school that didn't give me any money, in opposition to all of the schools that did. And, by telling me I couldn't do something was the exact way I was going to do it. And I have to say, I had the most fabulous education and fabulous mentors and teachers and coaches along the way. But during my senior year, I had gone back for an internship at New York Fashion Week. And I had an amazing time, but I didn't really think that much of it. And so I was waiting for a job offer from Birchbox at the time, which was my North Star. That's where I wanted to be at the time. They were it in beauty. And as I was waiting for that job offer, I got an email out of the blue from someone that had just remembered me from when I had done my internship and telling me they were putting together an agency. And I came and joined her as her second hire, which again, that was a moment for me where I started to learn about the power of relationships and really what leaving an impression can do.
Well, you took quite a leap, I think, joining DECIEM. I mean, you were the first U.S. American employee. So what was the draw?
I was in a PR agency for 2 years, the agency I had started when I had graduated college. And at the time, I was starting to get an itch. I was ready to learn more, to go more. I wanted to do more than just what I considered just PR. I was so interested in everything else that went on in a business. And I received an email from the beauty director at Fashionista, Stephanie Saltzman, who I credit to this day as changing my life in so many ways. And she, every time I see her, we joke about this, but she wrote me an email where she was telling me that there was this little Canadian startup and they wanted to hire someone in PR. They were just starting the US. They didn't really know where to start and had asked her if she had anyone she could recommend. She basically forwarded me this email and said, "You are an idiot if you don't take this job I'm setting you up for. This brand is going to explode."
She was right.
She was right. But you can imagine I was interviewing in the last round at Sephora. I mean, that is dream job in beauty. So I was on my path. I was ready to pay my dues in beauty. And so when I finally, to answer your question, had the interview with DECIEM, of which, again, meanwhile, I was waiting for my Sephora offer that day. In 15 minutes, I had one conversation that absolutely changed my whole life. And that was with Nicola Kilner, who is the co-founder of DECIEM and our former CEO, and just a huge expander for me in my life.
Well, can you remember what she said? Because it was a startup.
It's hard to remember that conversation. I just remember the level of energy that we both had during it. And it was this click. It's not that I formally applied for that role. It's not that there were multiple rounds of interviews. In fact, thinking back on it, I think everyone thought I was crazy for taking this job, especially my parents who were watching me, build this life, etc. And then I was saying, I'm going to go by myself, fly to Canada, try to start something in the US. And then I ended up working from my bedroom. I mean, Nicola and I built the beginnings of the US business from the St. Regis lobby, and less money, less title, but absolute alignment and just excitement.
That's amazing. Did you actually meet the other co-founder as well, Brandon Truaxe, during that time? What was that like?
Because it's been so long now, like I'm holding my heart a little here because it was thinking back. You don't really know the moments that change your life when you're in them. Sometimes you have a little pinch, but that was definitely one. I'd never met anyone like him, and I don't know that I ever will. If anyone listening has ever found themselves in the presence of a genius, you will know what I mean. He was just charismatic, energetic, talked a million miles a minute. I mean, everything he said, I wanted to write down. I can't even really put into words what it was like to experience a little bit of his magic. And so I feel so fortunate to have been in the presence of someone who saw the world just so differently.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about him because he is, of course, obviously the subject of the documentary. But let's just talk about The Ordinary for just a minute. I mean, you built this company in the United States into it was a disruptor. So what were some of the things that you did to make The Ordinary sell? I mean, I have an Ordinary product here, and I know some people cannot see it because this is an audio-only podcast, but it's a very basic bottle. It almost looks like medicine. This is hyaluronic acid, and it's got its ingredients, and it's not fancy. There's no flourish to it, but it is a good product based on most reviews. So what were some of the initiatives you took to make that sell?
Well, I love that you have it there. Let me tell you, that it just makes me so excited. Our power was refusing to play by the rules. So a big thing for me, and to be totally honest with you, in so many ways, the brand ended up selling itself, not at the beginning, but our mission was very clear. It was to prove that luxury and quality was not determined by price point. So the idea came really from pharmacies, as an example. So if you think about Advil, you think about something like ibuprofen. You don't see this priced at $5, $50, $500. You trusted the ingredient and you know that it works. And people hadn't done that in skincare. And so if you think about an ingredient like hyaluronic acid, the example that we're using, that was discovered in 1934. That is not a new innovation. But the industry would make claims around magic and miracle and selling you something around these commodity ingredients. So the mission actually came out of frustration because The Ordinary wasn't the first DECIEM brand, it was the 11th. The team had been trying for a long time to figure out what would stick. And it really came, of course, from Brandon's genius, but from the frustration that existed of the consumer not understanding what it was we were trying to do. And I think frustration is really the way that the brand was formed. When I think back to your question and kind of what it is that we did, that's why I say, I actually have a favorite line in the film when the Sephora CEO of North America says, I thought there was a zero missing. And to be clear, at the beginning, there was a lot of pushback. So you referenced, Lisa, the packaging. People thought it was too boring. People thought it was too white. People thought it would get dirty on shelves. People thought the names were hard to pronounce and nobody knew what they meant. Now you go into a Trader Joe's and you see hyaluronic on the front of a package. But at the time, there was a lot of pushback. And so it wasn't, the industry that propelled The Ordinary success. It was the consumer. And so a big piece that Nicola and Brandon always talked about is that before you have thousands of fans and millions of Instagram followers as we do today, you needed 100 people to love you. And that is really what has built our business. So the second major piece outside of just the community is the fact that we didn't launch where everybody expected us to be. So think about it. You would think CVS, mass drugstores, right? Given the average price point. And in my role, I was director of DECIEM USA by the time I was 26. So I was responsible for our US business. But when you think about our mission, right, of quality and prestige, it didn't fit into a CVS. So where were people going to take us seriously? Sephora. And so I think that when you look at our distribution was the one thing that really got the rest of the industry to understand what it was we were trying to do and just further propelled that mission forward.
So where did you distribute it initially?
Sephora and Ulta.
Which are huge cosmetics. They're giants in the industry.
2,500 plus stores. They are the leaders in this space. So those are the places to be.
Well, one of the companies, of course, whose eye caught the company was the Estee Lauder company. And they started buying a stake in the Abnormal Beauty company in DECIEM. And fully in May of 2024, they actually bought the company. So you're now working for Estee Lauder. Do they respect the mission? And how did that affect the processes?
So they actually were in a minority investment position when I joined the business. They had just made that deal a few months prior. And so to be honest, they've been part of the story the whole time. And I think what's really nice is that this was the first time they had structured a deal this way, where they really had trusted a team and a founder in Brandon, but in an organization and what the mission was. So they have been with us every step of the way, which in some ways, it didn't feel very dramatic when the final acquisition happened. But in others, I think it gave us what we needed. It allowed structure, scale, resources. As I said, at 26, I was running a P&L and I was Googling how to run a P&L. By many ways, I was not qualified to be doing what I was doing. And I learned by doing the whole time. But we needed to grow up a bit in order to really service the consumer the right way. So I have to say, it's personally, just outside of my work hat, personally, it was a huge full circle moment of mine, if we could say. I think, Lisa, we talked about at the top, but in college, I had a framed quote that said, I never dreamed of success I worked for, which is from Estee Lauder. And my dream had been to work for her company, Estee Lauder Companies. And so for me to have this full circle moment, that's stuff I don't think you can make up.
Now, we did talk about that before we were actually recording, but you're right. Estee Lauder, you said, was one of your idols.
Absolutely. What she's done as a woman entrepreneur in the 20th century, what she did, what she built, it's so inspiring to me. And so I think, of course, this is the place where DECIEM would end up. So it makes me really proud of where we are now.
All right. Well, let's talk about the documentary. For those people who are not familiar with Tribeca X, It is a segment of the popular Tribeca Film Festival focused on brand storytelling and branded entertainment. So think of participants like Mattel or Uber Eats or Seicam, an Egyptian company that helps transform desert into fertile land. So the Abnormal Beauty Company won the festival's Features Award, which is a top award. Judges said the film, which is largely the story of Brandon Truaxe, quote, dripped with courage, rarely seen in corporate autobiography. I just want to say, I did see an Instagram post of yours that summed it up, and I just have to read it. It said, we were told it would never work. We were told to change the prices. We were told to change the names. We were told to change the packaging. We were told they'd never put us in stores. We were told we'd lost it all. We were told we were done. We were told they'd never let us tell the story, but we were never really good at listening or following the rules. So how did the documentary come about?
You know, hearing you read that gives me goosebumps, even though it came from my own mouth. It really does sum up this entire experience in the past 10 years for me. But the origin story was that in 2019, a few weeks after Brandon had passed away, a group of us sat in his office. And for context, I had been fired during 2018, as so many of us that tried to help had been during that time.
That's part of the story.
It sure is. And so when I came back to the business and, we're all sitting in this room and we were really just trying to figure out how do we go forward? I mean, now what? And we didn't really have the answers. I mean, full transparency, press wouldn't even return my calls. People did not want to talk to us after 2018 and what had happened. I mean, the business was pretty much near collapse. And as we sat around that table, we're ideating on kind of where to go. Okay, who can get Sephora on the phone? I guess we need to hire HR. I mean, just these questions of how do you rebuild a business? And Nicola, our co-founder, her strength is unparalleled. And I think it was someone across the table said, we were in a really tense moment and someone just started laughing and said, this is going to be a good movie one day. And all of us did kind of have a moment where we just started laughing and we looked at each other and we knew that this had been an unbelievable, in many ways, story that we had all just experienced and lived through. But as you can imagine, we got a little busy. So 2019 happens, 2020 with COVID, the brand explodes. We can't keep anything in stock. Our fill rates are abysmal. And I would say about 3 years ago now, really started to stabilize as a business. Our fill rates improved. We had more leadership in place. We started to really play around again with this idea of what can we do as a brand heritage to really tell our story. And I am still and will forever be so grateful for two of my mentors in the business, Jesper Rasmussen, who is our global brand president and came from Estee Lauder from a big career there. And then Nicola Kilner, as I said, who trusted me and Aref, who's our director, to go and make this story. And so I was the executive producer on the project. Aref became the director. And these were kind of two DECIEM kids that had grown up in this business that then went off to tell the story that only we could have told. So it was a huge highlight of my life.
Well, I know the documentary has not been released publicly yet, and you did mention that you were fired in 2018 along with a lot of other people. And of course, Brandon unfortunately passed away in 2019. So there's a story there, and I know that you don't want to give it all away, but just tell us a little bit in your own words, what kind of happened, what the documentary is about.
Our real objective, outside of honoring his legacy, which of course is the first thing, is we all lived this. Yes, this story in so many ways was about Brandon and was about the business, but there was a group of people who stood by at all costs to help make what we all felt were our dreams come true. And in many ways, we had such a passion that we were changing something. We were scrappy and we were young and we could feel this energy that we thought we were changing our own little world. And it turned out to be much more than that. But the story really tells about the why and the how, more importantly. And ideally, our second objective here is really to hopefully help one person if they see it, because what ends up happening is, of course, you can read this in any of the press, but there's a spiral that happens with mental health and addiction. And nobody really talked about that during 2019. I mean, as I mentioned before, press wouldn't answer my calls. So 2018 Brandon and the spiral that was happening on social media, people didn't have the words for it at the time. And this kind of bully culture, I mean, again, they didn't know. I think the idea that someone could be remembered for 1 year of their life instead of the 40 years and the incredible things they did and all the people whose lives they touched, including my own, just felt so wrong, if that makes sense. So I think what people will see is a reckoning. They will see a true story, a very true story. And as you alluded to, I mean, it tells it. We don't hold back. I mean, Tribeca telling us that our film promised the consumer transparency the same way that the products did. We knew if we were going to tell this, we had to tell the honest, true version. So the film in its truest form is really a way of honoring Brandon, but also of showing a next generation what's possible. I mean, it's an incredible entrepreneurial story. It's a story of growing a business, scaling a business, building a business. Yes, it has the mental health component. Yes, it shows about addiction. It really touches in so many different realms, social media and the rise that happened during that time. I mean, not to be too high on our own supply, but I think it has everything.
Well, as Brandon was kind of spiraling, it sounds like the rest of you were kind of coming together and trying to be supportive. Are all of those people still with the company?
So what's really special is that you see in the film a lot of, without saying too much, one of the perspectives that you hear is from the group's perspective and the team's perspective. And there is a group of 8 or so of us in a room as we filmed, and all of those people, minus one, are still in the business today. And that's just because the other one moved back with their family. But the fact that we, at the time of recording, all of us who had lived through this were still with the business. It just goes to show how much we were so committed to carrying on this legacy.
It sounds like I really am looking forward to seeing it. It sounds like a very, very intense film. So let's talk for a second about the thrill. You won the award. What was that like for you? Did you expect it?
No. So I was not going to go to the award ceremony. In fact, I had had a big day at Tribeca the day before. Had been invited to speak on a panel and spent the day in the office and realized, oh, there's an award ceremony, happening at 5. I was not going to go. There was nothing for us to win. And then I thought to myself, you know what? Let's go so I can take a picture of us being nominated on a screen. And I can use that somewhere in the future to celebrate this milestone. And what ended up happening was I was sitting in the back row eating chips, which is so embarrassing for me because I am so paranoid about what I eat and what I put in my body. But I hadn't eaten anything that day. So I'm sitting in the back row just trying to,
And now you just told our entire audience, by the way.
I know. Well, trust me, I make up for it with my 5:45 a.m.s and everything else I do. But I'm sitting in the back row and I hear, them start reading. But as always, one film stood out. And I'm telling you, I am not paying attention to this. I am, again, trying to take a picture. I mean, I'm looking at an email. I'm, trying to be supportive of the people that are winning. They read this beautiful paragraph about brand differentiation and, a beating heart and a business profile. They talk about a character piece, a scintillating business profile, and a seminar in brand differentiation all in one. And in my head, I'm like, that sounds...
Something must have clicked.
Well, not yet is the scariest part. I start thinking, oh, that sounds nice. It is not until the last 6 or so lines where they say, and achieved the transparency its subject always promised its consumer. When I heard the word transparency, Lisa, my heart stopped because I realized, oh, they're talking about us. And so it was a true out-of-body experience. And anyone knows me knows that I am not able to be surprised. So that was one of probably 2 or 3 moments of my entire life where I have genuinely been speechless.
Anyway, you gave a terrific speech, yes.
Well, that is kind of you. I think I was shaking when I got up on the stage because none of my team were there. This was in New York. My team's in Canada. All my production, all the film crew, Aref, everyone's in Toronto. And so I'm holding this award. And all I can do is, again, tell the truth. So I told the story I told you, which is exactly how it happened in 2019 and what we were all facing. So I also cried on a stage, which is not my proudest moment. But, I had so many people afterwards come up to me and just say how proud they were to have seen us win. And it was magical. And it was a moment I will never forget. And I was so privileged to represent the countless people, both that had worked on the film, but those that had lived the experience and been part of the story. So I was pretty speechless.
Well, I can't wait to see it. It will be streaming on public platforms, I think, next spring.
Our ambition is for streamer next spring. So stay tuned.
Well, let's talk about what you're doing now. You've kind of moved on and you're now heading up Global New Ventures. What's that?
It's a fun term that we've just kind of decided for ourselves here. So part of it's twofold a bit. So I work on our heritage projects. So those are things like the film and then a book we're working on as well, which will come out later this fall.
What's that about?
Oh, the book is a coffee table book. It's really special. It's not a book about products. It's a book about what goes inside of them. And so it was done in partnership with Penguin Random House and Rizzoli here in the US. And, the team recently over there told me it was the fastest they'd ever completed a book, which was 4 months. How we got them all the content, which I guess is a new highlight. I mean, we're just so used to doing things at this turbo speed that we don't realize it's not how everyone else works.
How do you make a fascinating book about the products that are inside of cosmetics?
The ingredients.
The ingredients.
It's too bad because I just gave my one copy back to the team so we could send it to Toronto. But I will say, it tells you the story. It tells about the ingredients that revolutionized an industry. I talked at the top about hyaluronic acid, and it tells you how to pronounce the phonetics. It tells you when it was founded. For true beauty geeks, I think this will be a must read. It's a beautiful coffee table book, all done by our scientific team. So the authors are scientists.
It's coffee table, so it has pictures as well.
Beautiful photos. It's a stunning piece of work.
Okay, you sold me. You also have started a Substack called the Big Sister Playbook, a curated platform blending mentorship and storytelling to guide the next generation in building careers and lives they love. So what was that all about? What prompted you to do that?
So 3 years ago, I almost died, as a lot of people in my life know. And it forced me to ask myself, is this really it? Is this what it's supposed to feel like? So my mission really became, how can I use what was truly a breaking point for myself as a way to help someone else? You don't have to get to the point where I was in order to change your life. You just have to start. And I think that's what so many of us are afraid of doing in the first place. And so this is just the first start for me. There's the Substack. There's a podcast coming with a lot of amazing conversations with my personal people that have just lit me up and changed my outlook and way on life. So much more to come from that. But I've just been so blown away by the response so far.
Now, what do you mean you almost died?
Well, as one does, I was opening Sephora Mexico in Mexico City. We were launching The Ordinary there. It was incredibly exciting. I was 29 at the time. And while on this international business trip, I got an infection and got really sick. I spent 5 days on a bathroom hotel floor in Mexico City where people tried to shuffle in and out, giving me IVs, wanting to try to get me to the hospital. When I finally got back to the US, I pitched a Sephora market meeting that day, and then I went to the ER that night. So from there, I spent 3 months in and out of the hospital. I was sepsis. They didn't know what was wrong with me. It turned into a Crohn's diagnosis. It had a surgery component. It was, 6 months all in all of hell and just heartbreak and being terrified and an identity crisis. Moving back to New York. All of it. I had it all.
Oh my goodness, you've certainly done a lot in the last 10 years or so. And so what is the number one piece of advice you would give right now to a younger person, a little sister, if you will? And I know you do have a little sister seeking a career in your industry.
So many things, but the biggest one is the fastest way to figure out what you do want is to figure out what you don't like. So as I said, I did 12 internships. Half of them I loved, half of them I didn't. And that's a way exactly to figure out your niche. You have to keep trying. I wish everybody could just intern for a good amount because that's how you figure it out.
Well, that's great advice. And thank you so much for being with us. The Abnormal Beauty Company, as we said, is expected to premiere on streaming platforms next year. And you can find out more about all of DECIEM's products at deciem.com and visit Dakota's Big Sister Playbook on substack.com. And she also is on Instagram. I have to admit, I love your Instagram account. You are very busy and you've had so much success and a few little failures along the way, your illness, getting fired and recouping.
Lots of failures.
Lots of successes. Thank you so much for being with us. It was really a pleasure.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
This podcast has been brought to you by AM Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. I'm your host, Lisa Champeau. Talk to you next time.